So the second part of verse 2 that I really wanted to touch on, as you were preaching, I went home and in my study, I began looking at the miracles we discussed so far in Matthew. And it almost seems like there's a pattern of this. We see the centurion, right? He wasn't
servant
sick.
is
It was
healed.
his servant.
Right.
See, Peter's mother-in-law. Peter brought Jesus there.
That's right.
So
Yes.
over and over and over, we see this. We see the young girl who was dead and was asleep, and Jesus brings her back.
Right.
So
Yeah,
over
we're not
and over,
there yet. Shh, stop.
Yeah, sorry.
Spoilers.
I know, but the point still stands that we see this idea of their faith over and over and over again, but it's never been emphasized. At least to me, it's never been emphasized. This idea that the community is granted. What it's requesting of God for the individual. That's a
intercession.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's really just this thing of partnership, which I come back to a lot here at the church. It's that thing of partnership, which I come back to a lot.
Yeah.
God invites us to be participants in His kingdom. We're not just like wallflowers. We're not just there for show. We're supposed to be a part of it. Isaiah 40 talks about how, behold, I hear a voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, and bring the high places down and bring the low places up and make the way straight. God is on the move. God is doing something. You don't have to ask Him to show up. He's gonna show up. The question is, when He shows up, will you be ready for it? Right? And so God invites the community of faith, His people, to prepare the way for Him to move in people's hearts. And when the community of faith is vitalized and strengthened and sees a movement of God, then that impacts everything around it. I mean, you go back and look at the history of revivals, and everywhere there's been a great revival, it has impacted the community at large. This is probably one of my biggest sticking points about the whole modern conversation about revivals in the last 40, 50 years. Is you'll hear people talk about how God did this great thing, but the community is left completely unchanged.
So He did a great thing in this building.
Right. I'm sorry, I got a hard time with that.
Me too.
When God moves, it impacts people's lives. And so that's the idea that we see here with the text, is that you have these people who know that Jesus can do something, and they bring their friend, and they say, essentially, we know you can do something for our friend. Maybe the paralytic had faith, maybe he didn't. The key is that the key is that Jesus looks and He sees a community of faith, and He does this work. And that's I think that's really important for us as we, as Christians, look at the world. We want to see God move in our world. We want to see Him do stuff. That we have a part to play in that. And in order for us to play that part, we have to be together. We have to be single-minded. Acts chapter 1, I think it was A.W. Tozer, who talks about how in Acts chapter 1, the precursor to the Holy Spirit coming is that they were in one place and they had one mind.
Okay.
They were doing one thing.
Yeah.
They were praying in preparation for the Spirit to come. Yeah. These men who brought this paralytic to Jesus, they had one thing, one mind. They were in one place. They were united, exactly. And so there's a lot of that there. So with each of those stories that you pointed out, you see that kind of thing. There's a single-mindedness. There's a sense of mission. And I think we need to take that on as well. The Gospel of John, so we're not there and we're not going there anytime soon, but the Gospel of John has the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead, and before Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead, and after He raises him from the dead, He gives the community two commands.
Okay.
First is to roll away the stone. Jesus does not remove the stone from the tomb. He commands the people to remove the stone.
Yeah, he does.
Right?
Yeah.
They have a job to do.
Okay.
And then He calls Lazarus from the dead, and Lazarus comes out, but he's still bound in the grave bindings,
the shroud.
Yeah, the shroud. He's still bound up.
Yeah.
Which had to be interesting. But anyway, he comes out and he's still bound up. And Jesus tells the crowd, unbind him.
Okay.
Right? So in that moment you see these two different things that we are responsible for. You want to see the dead come back to life? Well, obviously you're not bringing the dead back to life, and I'm not bringing the dead back to life. That's something God does. But you want to see the dead come back to life? You make it possible for God to be able to speak to them and for them to come out of that grave. There's so many people who we give them the gospel, we give them a presentation of Jesus, but we don't make it possible for them to come out of their old life and into a new life because we haven't prepared for them as a community. Yeah. We assume that they can push that stone themselves. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, now you're saved. Go ahead and get that stone out of your way and you can get started living your life. Right? Like, it's ridiculous. And then after they come out, we don't unbind them. No. Instead, most of the time, we just criticize them.
We remind them of their death.
Right.
Of their bodies.
Exactly. And we allow the grave clothes to stay on because it's a helpful reminder to them. Because there's nothing better than having somebody walk around guilty all the time. That's how you keep them in line.
And it allows me to lord over top of them because I don't have
it anymore. Right. Yeah. But whose responsibility is it? It's our responsibility. Our responsibility to prepare the way for God to move, and our responsibility to deal with the after effect, the blessing of the fact that He has moved. And
so even that's encouraging for those of us who have unsaved loved ones.
Sure.
That this body of believers are the ones that are going to be praying for and help prepare, even if they're just preparing me to go deal with and love one and call out. So having a good community isn't just beneficial for the Christian in the community.
Right.
It sounds like it's beneficial for those around the community as well.
It's almost like God's intent was for us to be like salt and light.
I think I heard that in a song once.
Maybe.
It's a good stuff here for you.